I received a document from Yaoundé, and that document frightens me very much because I ask myself if we're really prepared to face what is coming up. In 1961, the international community, let me call it the international community that way because I call the United Nations all those who ganged up against us in the United Nations international community. They came together and sealed our fate, frustrated our future, sold us into slavery and servitude to La République. 57 years after, when we get up and we are wrestling, fighting to break loose from that entanglement, they are once more here because their interests are more primordial than our own interests. And it is important for us to always draw their attention to the fact that you can force a horse to the river, but you will never be able to force it to drink water. And that has to be done in a very loud, clear, and triumphant manner so that it sinks into their brains. The document that I received indicates very clearly how these Western powers have come together and planned a new strategy to enslave us and make sure that we never ever have the opportunity of rising again to demand that which, to ask for that which belongs to us. According to this document, the French government has carefully crafted and is working behind the scenes to convince the United States of America to adopt that document and to convince the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to also support that document so that they all come out now and gang against us. And the signs of what is contained in this document are out there already. According to this document, the French are planning to impose on Cameroon a 4-state federation. They have observed and are clear that the so-called effective decentralization of 10 states will not work, will not be accepted, will not be swallowed. The second point is they are also admitting that a 10-state kind of federation or decentralization kind of thing with elected assemblies and governors and everything is going to be extremely costful for La République, and that some of the regions now, if transformed to be autonomous and on their own and all whatnot, may not have resources to be self-sustaining, and that is really going to pose a problem. For that reason, they say to make sure that they bite into the federalism narrative and build a federal base that will, easily get into all of this, they now want to come up with a 4-state approach. I'm sure a good lot of us listened to the first secretary at the French embassy in Yaoundé give hints. They were just hints. But the real truth is, this is what they plan to do. Create a state which will bring together the North, the Far North, and the Adamawa region. Of course, they are culturally linked. Naturally, that state stands with no problem. Bring the next state that will bring together the center, the south, and the east. Of course, they are also culturally linked. No problem. But the next state will not be littoral and west, because they say the argument is the people of the littoral and the people of the west, the culture is not the same. They have a lot of things that don't really bind them together. So for that reason, the other 2 states will involve the northwest and the west, because as they hold it, the people of the northwest and those of the west are all grass fielders, share a lot in common, and so it will make sense for those 2 entities to form a state. And then the next will be the littoral and the southwest, because the people of the littoral and those of the southwest share a lot culturally in common that they will naturally fit together. The key objective of this breaking is not just for the sake of peace in Cameroon. It's because they want to move to the next stage of our assimilation. Since they could not obtain it in a unitary state, they now want to change words to make us believe that the ideological difference of going to federalism and then giving us some autonomy and all whatnot is going to help. And the real thing is divide the northwest and the southwest. Put them now in other little structures where they know the majority population of the littoral will dwarf the people of the southwest region. The majority population of the people of the west will dwarf those of the northwest region, and make sure that at the end of the day, what they could not achieve in a unitary state, they will achieve now following this particular pattern.
Welcome to another edition of Voices. My name is Augustine Ambe. I just listened to a presentation on video by John Ba Akuru, and I do have I have Mr. Terence Bangawakai on the phone. And Terence, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks for having me again.
Yes, thank you for making yourself available in such short notice. I don't know that I need a lot of introduction about Terence, but Terence again is the author of Expendable, and he also was the author of Make Victoria Victoria Again. He has a lot of other. He's authored a lot of other documents on our struggle. He's been a long-time follower of this struggle, and I always like to go to him because he doesn't just depend on what's going on WhatsApp or on gossip. He spends time and goes to the source of material. So he's a very good person when I'm in doubt I go to. So Terence, I just listened to a story by John Bakuro on video, and I'm sharing this part of it because I also want to share a little bits and pieces of that particular video with the audience. And basically what Mr. John Bakuro is saying is that while here's his take. He says that in our struggle right now, a lot of people are celebrating and as though we have already succeeded in defeating La République. He says that what is going on really is that while we are having internal arguments and little quarrels here and there, La République is undoing a lot of the work that was done since the lawyers came on and since this revolution started. And so his take is that while we are at where we are right now, depending on who you are, La République is undoing a lot of the work, and that one of the things that they're doing so far is that the French, and when I say La République, I really mean the French, that what the French have done, and he mentions the French by name, that what they have done is that they're coming up with another plan to undo all the work that the people of Ambazonia have done for the past 1 year, and which it's a work that he says we have accomplished a lot. But what he's saying is that the French are right now they've come up with a plan, and the plan is to divide La République. And when I say La République, it includes Ambazonia in this case, that they have gone away from the 10-state federation because they do not believe it will work. And they've divided into a federation of four states. And I think what is important for the people of Ambazonia here is that they've taken the southwest, what they call the southwest region, attached it to Littoral, and taken northwest and attached it to the western province. And he continues by saying that with this plan, they hope to neutralize the two quote unquote provinces of Ambazonia. Have you heard of that story? Let me start there.
Well, I've not heard of that story that John Baaku is narrating. Mm-hmm. I read a post in which somebody alluded to the fact that an official of the French embassy in Yaoundé had visited the northwest, the so-called northwest region in Ambazonia, and that person spoke about the cultural and traditional similarities between the populations in the northwest and western regions and those of the southwest and littoral regions. That's what I read. Now, maybe Mr. John Baaku has more information and more insight, and that I do not think for 1 minute that what I consider rubbish will work. First of all, the people of Manu probably have just as close cultural and traditional ties to the people of Cross River State in Nigeria, right?
Yes.
The people of the South Province, somewhere in Cameroon, has the same cultural, linguistic, and traditional ties as people in maybe Equatorial Guinea and all of those border regions. And these are occurrences all across the continent, not only the African continent, but in Europe. You know, you have the people in certain regions of France who speak more German than some of the people in other parts of Germany that border other regions. Correct?
Yes.
So that is a non-starter. And obviously it's illegal, it's illegitimate. But of course we know the French are masters in the art of illegitimacy and illegality when it comes to that continent. You know, they've created a regime in Yaoundé born out of a process of genocide, which I think we talked about in our last show that appeared on Voices. What is happening with the French is that they have failed in their project of assimilation of the people of Ambazonia into the Cameroon Republic. This process of assimilation began long before this crisis started. We can look back at the words of one Pierre Mesmer, who talked about Fumban being a sham, and that it was basically an annexation of Ambazonia. He went ahead in his book, in his autobiography, to say that the joke in Yaoundé and Douala at the time of Fumban Congress was that the new republic would be a bilingual French republic. So they took the whole thing as a joke.
Okay.
And they took us for granted. I think you are also privy to the document that came out of the French consulate in Buea in 1967.
Yes.
In which they were projecting the potential of the success of the assimilation strategy. So what we are seeing today is the failure of that project. The project of assimilation has failed.
Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall see the French sing harmony, and the children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God will reach the wonders of the nation.
In 2016, that failure was hit spectacularly, and that's what we saw. So what they are trying to do now is to manage this failure, right? They're trying to manage this failure of their assimilation program. And when you see, when you see the French, these officials saying these things like this is part of that process of managing a process that has failed woefully, you know. And the other thing I want to address regarding what you just told me about Mr. Kuro's piece is that, you know, La République and France cannot undo what we have accomplished over the last 2 years. And what we have accomplished over the last 2 years goes back many, 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 many decades. You know what I'm saying? This is like the death of 1,000 cuts. There have been several little cuts that was put on the body of this colonial animal. You know what I'm saying? And 2016 was just another cut, right? Okay. September 22nd last year was another one. October 1 last year, when we effectively, well, not effectively, but when we symbolically restored our independence, was another cut. And there is no way La République and France are going to undo that.
Well,
we have.
Yeah, go ahead,
we have
please.
We have a generation now of young people. I would say between the ages of 5 and 10 years old, who will grow up with the experience of the crimes that La République are carrying out in our land and France.
Yeah, before we go there, though, you said, do you know who actually who from the French embassy in Yaoundé went to Bamenda?
I don't know. I think what I read was a deputy ambassador. I don't know if they have deputy ambassador. But definitely, from what I read, it seems as if it was an official of the French embassy.
Yes.
To Bamenda.
Yes. Do you know who he met in Bamenda in this discussion?
What I read was that he met with, I think, the traditional funds and some personalities in the area. I mean, the type of people that, when the colonial authorities go there, they meet with,
Yes, I was going to follow up. Yeah.
I was looking for the original reporting on that, because I read, when you read a post on Facebook or WhatsApp,
Mm-hmm.
you want to go to the original reporting where it came from. I couldn't find it, so.
Now let me ask you this: when you say the traditional funds, I remember Atanganji Paul, who was recently named the Minister of Territorial Administration, also went to Ambazonia and met the funds. Now my question to you is, do these funds have a role to play in this revolution going on right now? And by implication, can they speak on behalf of the revolution, or can they deliver to these people?
Well, I think they have a role to play. I think some of them still carry the traditional respect that the opposition, merits or demand. It depends what type of role they want to play. I think there's a generation of younger people who have completely disregarded the authority of these traditional rulers, because they recognize that they do not stand for their interests.
And
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, and that's why I'm asking you the question, because it seems to me that these traditional rulers have no choice but to come and meet these people and listen to them, because they are part of the administration. The traditional rulers used to be, or they are supposed to be independent, but right now they're all salaried by the French, by the colonial administration. So they're not like independent. They don't speak independently.
Yeah. Well, I think the paradigm has shifted from the times when, in the old form of colonialism, once you get the traditional chiefs, you get their population, right?
Yes.
I don't think now that a lot of the people adhere to some of the ethics of traditional rulers anymore.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons is that the colonial authorities. They have kind of delegitimized the traditional authorities in the eyes of the people, And 50, 60 years ago, I think if you look at the power that was wielded by certain traditional chiefs, and if you compare that to what they can wield today, I don't think it's the same. I think it's minimal. So to answer your question, I do not think they have a critical role to play, but I do think this regime in Yaoundé, this very old regime, is still looking at things based on the paradigm of 50, 60 years ago. They have not changed in the way they do things, and I think they have no other choice, no other strategy than to fall back to the old colonial strategies of going through the traditional chiefs and funds, of using mass punishments, and of using what we're seeing in Amazonia today.
Right, and yes, just to conclude on this this chief thing, I think when the original colonialists like the Germans, when they came in, these chiefs were really they were the legitimate rulers, and they were ruling sovereign tribes or sovereign villages. You know what I'm saying? So those were the only authorities in the place, and the colonialists came and took over, obviously weakened their powers, and like I just said, right now they're under the paymasters of La République du Cameroon and the French colonization of Ambazonia. So I really don't. I think that talking to these traditional rulers is not they're not talking to the right people. And so they can say yes, because these are not the people who rebelled. These are not the people who rebel against the colonial regime. Are they?
No, they're not. And I think we agree on that.
Okay. You remember when I introduced this topic, I said that the French are trying to convince the British and the Americans. I also learned, and I think I did read a piece. I think that piece was reported by, I don't know if you read the piece. It was reported by Agwobala, that they had a meeting, a roundtable meeting at the American embassy. And so my understanding is that what the Americans are doing now, they are testing this French new plan to assimilate. And I agree with you that the plan to assimilate the people of Ambazonia in the 60s failed. It's taken 56 years. It hasn't succeeded. They're trying to accomplish the same thing. But it seems to me that they're getting some bite from the Americans, at least. We don't know what the British and the other people they're trying to sell this plan to us are saying, but we know for sure that the American embassy in Yaoundé called a meeting recently, and it was to get a feel about this plan. Did you heard about that?
Yes, I heard about that, and let me share with you my thoughts about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of this crisis, I think everybody has advised that we should dialogue, and we should dialogue based on the root causes of this conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who wants to initiate dialogue that addresses the root causes of this issue, they're welcome. If that's what the American embassy was trying to do, great. But let us point this out. There's a CIA report, which I think was declassified in 1986, in which it read in part that if the Yaoundé government, if the central government in Yaoundé continues with their policy of assimilation, the people of Ambazonia will resort to armed rebellion. This is the CIA analysis, which was released over 30 years ago.
Yes. Yes.
So the American embassy in Yaoundé and the current American ambassador in Yaoundé knows what the root causes of this crisis are. As an aside, as a young student at CPC Valley, in 1984, and I believe in 1986, hundreds of us marched from Bali to Bamenda to protest what we believed at the time was reforms, quote-unquote reforms in the education system, which was meant to kind of bastardize the English curriculum, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this, so we're talking about the same time in 1986 when the American embassy released this report, or wrote this report, which has now been released, right?
Yes.
Now, the American embassy, I don't know I imagine that if they're going to hold a meeting in Yaoundé and invite, stakeholders from Ambazonia and from the Republic of Cameroon, they probably do that with the blessing of the French, because the French run Cameroon, they run Yaoundé. They are the colonial masters of the place. They have cooperation agreements with Yaoundé. They have the army personnel all over the place. They have their technicians all over the place as advisors,
mm-hmm.
so-called technical advisors,
mm-hmm.
That we know of. So probably the French have said, let us chill in the background and let us send our allies, the Americans, to show their face. Maybe they'll be perceived as a neutral or disinterested third party. We're not buying that.
Well, so you don't think the Americans are genuinely seeking solutions for this? You think they're an agent of the French?
They may be genuinely seeking solutions. But, in order for them to be genuine, I think the first thing that they need to do is to condemn what a lot of people consider as crimes of war which are being carried out in Ambazonia. The American embassy in Yaoundé cannot be unaware of the fact that entire villages, Kwakwa, Kembong, and others, have been burnt to the ground. They cannot be unaware of the fact that a 96-year-old great-great-grandmother was burnt to ashes in her home. They cannot be unaware of the collective punishment which France and Cameroon Republic is carrying out in Ambazonia. I am yet to come across a document of condemnation of these crimes in Ambazonia. So if they want us to look at them as people who are really concerned about the plight of Ambazonia and about the resolution of this crisis, they must condemn what I've just described. It is unacceptable that the American embassy would take this move without even issuing, for public relations purposes, a condemnation of what these people have been doing in Ambazonia.
Yes, what is happening
so
there?
We have to question their sincerity in it. Are they really seeking justice for the people of Ambazonia? We welcome their involvement. Everybody has said, let's dialogue. Let's address the root causes of this issue. So that is welcome, but I think we must question why have they been silent on all of these atrocities which are being committed.
Well, let me start by saying that let's go back to the CIA report. This CIA report was independent, and they arrived at the conclusion without the participation of Ambazonians, which meant that they themselves looked at the situation and said, if we were the people, what would be the reaction, or what would be the reaction of an objective human population to what was going on in Ambazonia, right? Would you say that?
Yes. So
that reaction that the people of Ambazonia would resort to arms someday if what is going on in their territory and in their lives is not resolved. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? That was an analysis by an intelligent organization looking at it objectively and looking at the people on who these acts were being perpetuated.
This reaction is based on the laws of nature. It is natural, right?
Yes.
That if you as an individual, if you as a people are on the verge of extinction, you fight back. And that's basically what the CIA report analysis said. That if this continues, if this process of assimilation and extinction of these people as a group continues, they will have to resort to armed rebellion as their only alternative. That is what the CIA said in this report that was written in 1986. It's not you and I saying it today, 30 odd years later. So everybody knows that I think there's an undercurrent of racism. And I think it's this racism that the French have taken advantage of to get away with all of the atrocities that they've committed in Africa without paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
I got involved in the French narrative in Africa after reading a book called Noir Silence. And in the foreword of that book, we also alleged that, France was responsible for financing, for arming, for instructing, for legitimizing, and for protecting the authors of the genocide in Rwanda. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have we heard of any French person who was tried for the role of France in Rwanda? Because what happened in Rwanda, the victims were needed. They do not count. So you can go to Ambazonia and you can enact collective punishment, burn out entire villages, burn to ashes great-grandmothers, and nobody says a word. because the victims are niggers. But I think what I want the people of Ambazonia to really hold dear is the words of an African-American writer. I think his name was Baldwin. One of the phrases he said was, "I'm not your nigger." Ambazonia should take that claim. We are not your niggers. You know, we are so unfortunate because we are, I think, the only territory on that continent that has gone through the German, through the English, and now through the most brutal form of colonization under the French. And we have to make that claim that we're not the needed. Otherwise, why would the American ambassador call a meeting without ever having condemning what they know is happening in Ambazonia? They have intelligence assets all over the place. They know exactly what is happening. It's an insult to our intelligence.
Well, let me ask you, do you have an idea of who was in attendance in that meeting at the American Embassy?
I think Barrister Agombala was there. I think Cardinal Tumi was there. Mm-hmm. And those are the two Ambazonians that I know of. And then there were some Cameroonese politicians and I think members of the BIA French government in Yaoundé there.
Now, you know what is surprising there is that even the Americans are not even talking to the people who, you see, Agombala, Cardinal Tumi, and obviously they're bringing people of La Republic origin. These are not the people rebelling. These are not the people really facing the brunt of this colonization going on. And again, these are not the people rebelling. So are the Americans approaching this objectively?
It is
because it seems to me. Go ahead, please.
It's difficult to make an argument for their objectivity, having listened to what I just said. If they want to be perceived as being objective, as a country that proclaims to be a moral thermometer for the world, you should condemn the crimes of France and La République in Ambazonia. We should condemn it. Even if it's just for public relations purposes, they should condemn it. We as Ambazonians, we must tell these stories. We cannot be flattered that the American ambassador in Yaoundé sits there and calls a meeting involving this crisis. Now, if this is the beginning of finally addressing the root causes of the issue, it is obviously welcome. Right?
Yes.
Because we have to open the door first,
yes,
letting a few people, and then maybe later on the other people will come in, and you all sit down and address the root causes of the issue. But as an Ambazonian, I cannot accept that the American ambassador will make such a public move or the American embassy in Yaoundé will make such a public move without condemning the atrocities that France and her colony Cameroon are committing on the people of Ambazonia.
But let me say this though.
That as Ambazonians, we have to speak very loudly and clearly about it.
Well, you know, when the
because
crisis,
nobody is speaking on our behalf on these crimes.
Well, what I wanted to say is that remember that when the crisis first started, the Trump administration came out and condemned what was happening down there. Remember? He even refused to invite Paul Biya to his African summit during last year's UN General Assembly meeting.
Is that enough? But what effect did the condemnation have?
Well, no. What I want us to do is first of all acknowledge that did happen, and then the question is, why was there no follow up, or what happened that they went silent?
That's a question for the Americans to answer. But as an Ambazonian, what I'm saying is that we must trumpet these atrocities that some people have considered crimes of war, which are being carried out by France and Cameroon Republic in Ambazonia. It is our responsibility as Ambazonians of conscience to trumpet these atrocities and to bring it to the light of the world.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Let the Americans do what they need to do, and let us do what we need to do.
This explains very vividly why you had that outing by the first secretary at the French embassy in Yaoundé. That is why the United Kingdom is getting more and more prone in that manner to see how they push, that kind of narrative into our minds to perpetuate what they had done way back in 1961. That is why the United States of America is now trying to bring various stakeholders together and find out coyly if at all such an approach could find roots in our midst. This is a serious danger. We have to fight it very hard before we suddenly find the international community coming to tell us they want to organize a referendum which will involve all Cameroonians around this kind of project. That would be calamitous. And how do we face off against this? It is not by bickering in our various Facebook or WhatsApp groups. It is by coming out like we have done before. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate our brothers and sisters who took the pains to go even in the cold and stand on the streets of New York around the United Nations premises to once more demonstrate, to once more show, outrage at what is happening on the ground. We have to multiply actions like those across the world. And this time, the message has to be clear and very sound that we will not, I repeat, that we will not accept any form, any kind of association whatsoever again with La République du Cameroon. Make them understand that if this is what Britain and France consider to be the linkages, they should have done this in 1916. They should have done this in 1919. They should have done it after 1914 when they defeated Germany and took over German Cameroon, who was larger than the current Cameroon that we have, and shared it the way they shared. They should have taken into consideration these cultural linkages at that time. If they did that, we would not be here today. It is not today that they continue feeling that they will keep denying us that freedom, which is our inalienable right, by using such fake pretenses.
If they help in resolving this crisis by addressing the root causes, as everybody has said, by addressing the root causes, then we'll all be better off for it.
Well, let me ask you this. My understanding is that the Americans, or from what I got from John Bakuru, is that the Americans are testing this plan that the French have put out. So I don't think they have anything original. So I don't know that they're trying to get to the root cause, but they're testing this plan that the French put out. My question to you is this a plan that would change anything? Is it a workable plan?
It's not a workable plan because Ambazonia and Cameroon Republic have an international demarcated border. There is no treaty that has altered those borders. And there we go again to the root causes of this crisis. It begins and ends there. So any plan, whether it's being tested by the French, by the Americans, by the British, that does not address the root causes of this crisis will not work.
Okay, I don't believe that it will work either. But let me ask you. Let me throw you the scenario. Let's assume that they go. Obviously, they're not asking us. They're not asking the Ambazonian people. They're asking. I hate to call the funds. And by the way, let me ask you a very quick question. Do you think the appointment of a Tanganji Paul as the Minister of Territorial Administration, you think is part of? You think it's part of this plan so that it's executed by an Ambazonian, if you want to call a Tanganji Paul an Ambazonian?
As I just said, the plan will not work, so it doesn't matter if they appoint Tangachi Paul or if they appoint you.
Okay, let me. Thanks for that. That's a very quick answer. Let me ask you this: if they actually go ahead and effect this plan, what does it do to the struggle? Say the Northwest region becomes part of the Western region. Obviously, I'm sure they would draw it so that the people of the Western region will be a majority. What would that have an effect on the struggle?
What did Paul Biya do in 1984? He changed the name to that of Cameroon Republic before 1961.
Mm-hmm.
What has happened? As I said, we can engage in theoretical scenarios, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We can sit on the table and say, okay, we'll call this Grafi province, we'll call this Sawa province, and combine the two of them. Just as Biya changed the name from United Republic to Republic of Cameroon.
Mm-hmm. Just as they break southern Cameroons into Northwest and Southwest, whatever they call it now.
Yeah, and change the names of all of the, from Bamenda province to Mezam, from all of those things that they did. What we are saying is that there's a law of nature which applies to individuals and to people. Ambazonians are a people. We have an international border between Ambazonia and Cameroon Republic. Any consideration that doesn't take those realities into account will fail. And that is why everybody has said, let's go back to the root causes of this issue. Every reasonable person. But you know who has refused this out of hand?
Tell
you know
me.
what refused this proposition out of hand?
Tell me, please.
France and La République. And what is their reason? They are not prepared to discuss about the form of the state.
No, they are insisting on owning Ambazonia.
Yes. So I hope, the headline that I read regarding I think it was from the Guardian Post.
Mm-hmm.
They used the word stormy. That the meeting was stormy, So I hope.
You mean the meeting at the American? You mean you talk about the meeting at the American embassy?
Yes, So I hope some of these issues were raised, because you cannot address this problem without, again, at the risk of repeating myself, without really addressing these so-called root causes.
And okay, I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you, why do you think they don't want to go to the root causes?
Because the French have cooperation agreements with Cameroon Republic that enables them to act as a colonial master and extract as much wealth as they can. Most of that wealth comes from Ambazonia. Going to the root causes means addressing those cooperation agreements which will not apply to Ambazonia, because Ambazonia will have to become an independent country. Ambazonia will have to become an independent country because, as it has been said in the past, there never was a treaty of union signed between these two peoples. The lawsuit that was filed in 2015, which led up to the lawyers' strike in 2016, requested that they show a proof of union between Ambazonia and Cameroon Republic.
But let me say this, though. I think
addressing the root causes takes away the loot of Ambazonia from the hands of the French. That is why they do not want to address the root causes of the issue, in my opinion.
Yes, and I think that that's just one level of root cause. I think if you want to talk about root cause, you would even go back all the way back to the UN and to the British, because the people of, let me say this, and I think some some authorities in the Ambazonian government have actually said this, that the people, that all we are really asking now to be respected is what the international community did. We did not draw the borders. You know, the people of Ambazonia did not say this will be our international borders, left, east or west, north or south. These were drawn by the international community, and then they said, and then they passed a law and said, Britain, you be the trusteeship of these people, and lead them to their independent or self-government. Obviously, today the Southern Cameroon is neither independent nor self-governing. And so, when you talk of root causes, I don't think it just ends with all these with the colonial state that Ambazonia was forced into. It also goes back to talking about the role of the British, and also goes back to even the UN, which is why all these institutions are resisting. So so they all can talk about going back to root cause, but they are not going to go back to the root cause, because going back to the root cause would tell a very different story than the one they want everybody else to believe.
Well, they have to go back to the root cause in order to solve the problem. No matter what story it tells, the story has to be told. And I think that's why the people of Ambazonia are in rebellion.
Yes, I was going to say that's what the
truth must be revealed, so that we can finally, hopefully in our lifetime, resolve this issue.
Yes, and those who do not want to go back know that resolving the issue in a just and a moral way will end up with the people of Ambazonia being a free people, because the people of Ambazonia do not belong with the foreign people of La République du Cameroon.
That's what justice calls for. That's what equity calls for, and that's what's going to happen. The question, when you talk about all of these historical ramifications involving the British and the UN, why is it that those ideals should not apply to the people of Ambazonia? Is it because we are Africans? Is it because we're Negroes? Is it because we're niggers? That when they make all of these lofty laws, respect borders, international peace, crimes of war, and when that happens in Africa, they do not enact these principles. Why? As I said, that is a story that we will tell. We have to tell, because nobody else is telling that story for us.
Well,
and every opportunity that I have, I will tell the story.
Yes.
I will speak my conscience and be damned.
Yes. As you were speaking, I was smiling, and the reason I was smiling was because when you said, "Is this because they're black people?" I just thought of the black movement in America that says Black Lives Matter, African lives do matter. Mm-hmm. And the way to make
Amazonian lives matter.
Yes, and to make these matter is to actually apply the law. That's all that we need to do. Apply the law equally. Let me ask you this. Obviously, we haven't in the movement itself. We haven't been hearing news. I think this American the news of this plan and the news of what happened in the American embassy came to me suddenly. So what should this tell the people of Ambazonia who are in this struggle?
Well, the struggle continues. I think the people of Ambazonia have been successful in sabotaging in defeating actually the project of assimilation,
or in revealing the ineffectiveness of that whole policy.
Yes, so they have been successful in doing that. So that this is what it tells them, and it tells them that maybe this meeting is the beginning of the acknowledgement that we have to be treated as human beings and given justice. We do not know that the Navy, But I think the people of Amazonia definitely need to know that they have been successful in stopping the process of them being assimilated into this French slave empire.
Yes.
You know, where currencies and bank accounts in Paris are hoarding the monies of Africans who do not have clean water to drink.
Well, what I was going to say is that this I think the biggest revelation to the people of Ambazonia is that they should know that their actions are forcing the rest of the world to deal with their situation, and that the rest of the world will not deal with it unless they are forced to. And they are forced to by their fighting back, by their suffering. You mentioned villages being wiped out. Yes, there are a lot of villages that have been wiped out, a lot of people burned. I was listening to a particular lady who said that, we've been talking only of this grandma in Kwakwa, that a lot of other people were burnt in a lot of villages in their homes. And so these people are living in the woods right now. They're living in the forest, and the rainy season is coming. And so, but all of this is the outcome of what the UN prescribed for the people of Ambazonia, of what the British worked hard to put there, and what the French have been doing, the work the French have been doing on the people of Ambazonia for the past 57 years.
Well, if the UN respects its charter, then I think this problem will be solved sooner rather than later.
Yes. So the people of Ambazonia should really rest assured that while things look like nothing is going on, no, their voices are not going in vain. Their fight is not in vain. The price they are paying is not in vain. And there's I don't have this quote. It is said that the act of justice. You remember that quote? What does it say?
I don't have the exact words. I think it was something like the act of, I don't know.
Yeah, it basically says that if you
find it and put it in there somewhere.
Yeah, I will.
I know the quote you're referring to.
Yes, it basically.
I mean, basically, what it's saying is that justice prevails at the end.
That justice prevails at the end. Yes.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time to have this discussion with me. There's a fuller discussion. I know you wrote it off, but there's a fuller discussion to have about the appointment of Atanganji Paul. And the point I want to make there is that every time no, let me rephrase that there are a lot of people who have personally benefited from the suffering of the people of Ambazonia. And each time the crisis come to a head, there's one single person who benefits, or one single group. For example, Foncha will tell you that the people of Amazonia lost in 1960 or in 1961. But there were certain people who benefited, and the people who collaborated with La République and facilitated the implementation of their plans in Ambazonia they benefited the most. You and I had a discussion on how the SDF is benefiting from this crisis. You should know that the value of SDF goes up the more the people of Ambazonia insist on their rights. And so Atanganji Paul again is just another person who have benefited from the crisis. And you benefit by how much you are a Judas Iscariot against the people of Ambazonia. Would you say?
Well, it's not the first, it won't be the last, but at the end of the day, I strongly believe Ambazonia will become free.
Absolutely. I really thank you for taking the call, sir.
You're welcome, sir.